Well, welcome to another episode of Rimshots with John right here on the Rock Rage Radio Network. This gentleman needs no introduction. We wore matching glasses today. We didn't actually sort that out, but I have the one, the only Mr. Mike Tramp. How are you, sir?
Yeah, well, that's just the way it is. It comes with age.
Well, you got to be able to see. It's very important to be able to see who you're talking
Exactly. I
to.
mean, who wants? Yeah, I know.
So, your promotion folks send me the material for the Songs of White Lion Volume 2. I initially go, okay, it's what are we going to get? And I listen to it, and as I'm listening to it, I'm reading the presser, and you're saying that it's kind of done, I guess, the way you might have loved to do it when you were younger. Just talk about that for a second, because I just absolutely love what I was hearing.
Yeah, I mean, without sounding two-faced, because obviously these songs were written, in the early 80s and recorded shortly after, up until 1990. And when you then, after many, many years, and obviously also lots of interviews and different thoughts and look back and think back, there it's almost like it's split in between. You have the ideas, but you might not have had not just the time, but whatever else needed to really fully explore the song. And what I'm trying to say with that is that when I get a chance to go in and do something a second time, I have all the knowledge of what I did wrong or what I didn't get right the first time. I mean, it's that Monday morning quarterback in rock and roll. And at the same time, sort of like I set out on a journey in the 80s with these songs, and now this time capsule has finally been dug up, and here is the result of the maturity of it. And I'm extremely pleased that songs that were written in the decade of the 80s, where everything was very visible, loud, and at times the image almost overpowered the songs have stood the test of time. And the maturity of where my voice is today and retelling these songs and the stories, or makes me comfortable that I actually am comfortable with sitting and also excited about talking, quote unquote, White Lion in 2024, after I have basically done 25 albums since White Lion broke up in 1991.
And that's incredible. I mean, the first thing I'll ask, what's your approach with the players to these songs? Because, you know, you had the first two albums. My favorite White Lion album is the third album. But what's your approach? Yeah, I playing in a band up here in Canada. We used to pound around in the winter in a van, and we used to play the absolute guts out of that record. And what's your approach with the players and when you go into the studio to to give their impressions of the song? And how do you approach that?
Well, I mean, you already have the blue book or the blueprint of what's already been done. So all that knowledge, and this album really basically came down to two things. Can these songs, especially Vito Brada's guitar parts, which are the key to these songs, can they be performed in a different key that fits where the singer wants to sing them now? So that's what it all came down to. So this was Marcus Nand, the guitar player, and myself worked on this for a long time, because, he was pushing and says, oh man, this could be cool if you went out and did this again. I says, listen, the only way for me to go out and do this, even recorded, is if it feels real and natural to me where I am today. I cannot be Mike Tramp 1988. I don't want to be Mike Tramp 1988, at least not there. And so that became the challenge for him, because Vito Brada's guitar playing is like Mozart, man. It's sort of written in one key, and that's where it needs to remain. But Marcus put so much work into it that he even got the blessing and the approval of Vito, that he was so cool with the interpretation of this. in, and then again, with changing that key and bringing the song sort of down, they also became fatter and in a little way darker, even though, I mean, how dark can weight be? But it's sort of just, it got that fatness, that thickness suddenly. And then, of course, re-recorded today with how you can make a record sound today and not how the record sounded in 87 or
Absolutely.
88 or 89.
Well, and I mean, the sounds were great. And the song, the reimaging of the songs was very cool because I mean, you know how it happens, right? Sometimes, somebody they do it out of boredom or they've been playing the song so much they just want to change it for the sake of changing it. Were very upfront with the fact that you wanted to, I guess, hear your voice the way that it is now versus the way that it was then. Which I think is brilliant. Do you get tired of having to deal and being lobbed the same questions about White Lion, about, oh, are you guys ever going to get, because it's been out there. I mean, Vito just is pretty much done, right? You got to keep going. So do you ever get tired of answering those questions?
Well, probably the same way James Cameron, gets asked if, are you really sure Titanic sank? I mean, the thing is, when the truth is out there and it's almost when you make a post and you write something very specific, and then if you choose to go down and read the comments and somebody asks the question, you just answer it in your own post. I mean, there's a limit to how you want to scream at that moment, So it's not that I'm getting fed up with talking about White Lion, and I enjoy explaining and telling the story of where we were as a band and what we experienced when someone is interested about it. But keep answering if the band is going to reunite, because if the band was going to reunite, I wouldn't have been doing these two albums. I
Great
am
point.
the only White Lion act in the world.
Well, and that's a great point. And you said 25 records since White Lion. I've followed your career. I mean, it seems like you're playing all the time. I saw where you're going to be playing starting very soon. Um, I'm looking at your calendar and I'm going, man, oh man, this guy starts up and it's almost close to Christmas time before he's done. And then you probably continue again with this, I guess, volume two. Does that pretty much wrap that up for you? And now you can go on to the next, or is there going to be a volume three?
Well, I mean, a volume. I mean, like I says, this is not Police Academy. I mean, that we're just going to keep throwing a movie out and they get worse and worse. especially when, especially
I'm
when
only
all the
laughing because
stuff.
I saw the new Beverly Hills Cop the other night. So good one there.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, who would have thought that Beverly's like Cop 3 would come out on a streaming service, 40 years later and stuff like
Yeah,
that? Anything is possible. And a volume 3 is also possible. I mean, we're doing this now almost as going on a fishing trip. There's no money in making records anymore. We have to really, 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 really squeeze it all together. And if it wasn't that we all had studios at home to do most of the work with, we couldn't do it. So it sort of becomes like reliving, that part of that enjoyment you get when you start building a song and when you start trying doing some other things. I mean, I've basically written my next English solo album for next year. When it will be out and stuff like that, it's not sure. And of course, I know that I most likely will not be touring on it because the posters will say White Line, regardless if I come with a puppet show. I mean, it just follows me so and so, but that's fine. But the fans are still asking for the solo albums and love hearing that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I think that there are definitely some interesting tracks that we could make volume 3 about, if that's what we were going to do. And there's nothing originally in the idea, but I mentioned it to someone else, that now I actually can listen to our old productions 35 years later on. And so I say, if somebody wants to play, yeah, it's enjoyable because it's up to par with any current rock record out there.
Well, and I want to ask you that because as you were giving me that answer, I was kind of thinking about that. You know, but there's this whole new sort of thing, you see it all the time, where people are obsessed with backing tracks and who's using backing tracks, and it's a new sort of thing, and it almost gets like every second stories about backing tracks. And those records were so produced, like for the day. And I'm assuming you guys did a lot of the stuff live, all the vocals and all that, because you had firepower in that band. Um, is it hard, I guess, to do you even attempt to emulate any of the sounds from then now in terms of when you're recording, or you just say, you know what, clean slate, man, we're just gonna do what we do?
Well, I mean, basically, besides making your harmony stereo in the studio and most of the rhythm guitar is double tracked, White Line was never a sort of like an over sort of the word produced is a difficult word, but there really isn't. I mean, the Pride album is our own version of how we saw Van Halen record in many ways. We wanted it to, and it was how the band sounded live. I mean, we were three singers in the front, and in my live outfit now we're four singers, and we got Marcus with a big guitar, and I play guitar too. I add my own little color in between, sort of it's, some people says, what the fuck is Bruce Springsteen doing in Van Halen? What's he doing there? Just jingling along. But it's sort of what it is. It just makes it all sort of current today. I
Right.
also speak a lot different to the audience than I did in the 80s. Actually, I speak a lot more and I tell a lot more stories. So I think that, with the bands that got into problem with the backing tracks is that they try to go out there and replace themselves because they couldn't perform that way. I mean, it'd be different if you do additives. Then you could debate that if you think it's cool. I mean, there's a couple songs we have some keyboard intros on and stuff like that, and we can't afford to have a keyboard player on. But when you go in and reproduce or replace a lead vocal or bass for the main guys who are making, $5 million a show, then there's something wrong with it.
I'm glad you said that about economics versus, backing tracks for the sake of doing it, because people don't understand that's a very real thing in this day and age. I mean, like, it's tough to make money in this business now. It's tough to have longevity. I mean, you've certainly had it. And I guess I'll end with this because I know you're a busy guy today with pressers and stuff. You've done thousands of interviews, you've toured the world, you've, 25 records since White Lion. Has there been anything that somebody hasn't said, Mike, tell me this about White Line, about my career, about what I've done? Like, it's never been broached that you're kind of like, when am I finally going to get asked this question?
There probably is,
Yeah.
and maybe my own documentary is what going to reveal the A to Z. I think that what I did notice is that a lot of folks who came aboard when Pride exploded with Wade and When the Children Cry and Tell Me and stuff like that were not aware that we had the Dark Fight to Survive album, which was recorded in 1984 and was lying in a box for a year because a record company we signed with decided to drop us before they released the album, and all kinds of stuff, and what the background of the band then was, and so on. So I do feel that there is quite, and we didn't feel it back then, but now having to you sort of retell the story and sometimes also make the interviews as interesting as possible, so you don't have anybody just skip onto an interview with Vince Neil instead. I always try to stick to the point of what is the core and the secret to White Lion and things like that. And I think what it comes down to is that when Vito and I started writing these songs, we were writing them first as writing great songs that you could sit on a beach with a couple of your friends, an acoustic guitar, a little fire and a couple of beers, and sing the songs without having big drums or guitar solos. So we went into the approach of writing songs that would always last, because the melody was sort of like the core of the song, not that it required massive introductions via elevating drum risers or fire breathing dragons or stuff like that, but actually, which obviously I proved over the last 10 years when I've traveled the world with an acoustic guitars and done half my solo stuff and half White Lion in a new acoustic version, that the songs and the lyric are as strong today as they were when they came out. And now the praise I get today is how current and not faded the lyrics are, and that to me is great, and I tell you, I'm sort of pleased that I don't have to go up and sing "Talk Dirty to Me" every night, kind of the thing.
I agree with you on
I
that
mean,
assessment,
I
sure.
say that with a glint in my eyes,
Yeah, me too.
But
Last question. And because you mentioned that Mr. Brada gave you your guitar player the blessing on the songs. I had a conversation with a guitar friend of mine about him, and he was like, "I can't believe that he doesn't play anymore." It's like, well, you know what? You get to a point in life where you're done. You're done. He's at a good place in his life, I take it, and you guys are still friends and all that good stuff. Is that a fair assessment?
yeah, no, I mean, Vito and I Vito always said to me, and besides him and I being in a couple of silly little lawsuits, he says, "My guy, you've always been my friend. It's just that my interpretation of a friend was somebody go fishing with or climbing mountains and stuff like that. Vito didn't like climbing mountains and doing fishing, but he was still my friend. And which is why, as a songwriting team, we were one. There was nothing. I think just as the band, and sometimes I actually regret not taking that step. And maybe both Vito and I were not capable of it at that moment of reaching out to each other, says, listen, we are the band. We are everything this is about. We need to save this. We need to make sure that you and I don't butt head because you want to go fishing or you want to go motocross riding after the rehearsal and I want to go home. And as our success built, and at times I would be in a separate dressing room for many reasons, both because I wanted to warm up and I didn't want to hear the drummer tune his snare drum, etc., etc. We also bit by bit separated in other ways, and we didn't hear the warning of signs that we should attend to what was the engine and the wheels of White Lion and so on. So, and then eventually when a lot came against us with releasing Main Attraction early 91, Greg and James leaving, grunge coming in and MTV turning their back on bands like us and all the other 80s bands, and we sort of like, I used that opportunity to say, okay, you're done with this. It's time to move on. I heard the calling for wanting to do something else. But had Vito stood there and pulled me back and said, listen, we might be a little bit outdated now with our hair and stuff like that, but as songwriters, we can survive, and we had the money, and we could have gone a little bit into, hibernation and maybe worked on the next album. As I said in all the interviews that I've done, Vito and I were always planning on bringing in a major keyboard player, not somebody to play a pad behind the curtain, but somebody that really could come in and contribute like a like a Steve Walsh in Kansas, like a Greg Raleigh, or late on Jonathan Cain in Journey, somebody that actually were a big part of the sound. And I knew Vito were really wanting to have something to play to, and the band would definitely have gone in a much more kind of progressive way. We would then, have gone that way, and maybe when we then would have come back with a fifth album, we would not have been put in the same place as we were before, and the songs would have done the talking.
Well, Songs of White Line, Volume 2, it's on Frontier. That was probably the best explanation of how friendships are different that I've heard in a while. So thank you for that, Mr. Tramp, sir. I know you got a lot of these things to do. Best of luck with this. I know you're going to go out soon. It sounds great. You look great. I'll do a better job of shaving next time. But until then,
Actually,
keep
I haven't
going.
shaved for 2 days.
Looks a little better on you than me,
I
though.
haven't shaved for 2 days, but my beard doesn't grow as fast.
Yeah, but I'm Sean McKenna from Halifax, Nova Scotia. You're Mike Tramp from Copenhagen, so there's a big difference there, my friend.
That's
Anyway,
right,
thank you
man.
so much for doing this, and keep her going, my friend.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Thank you, buddy.